Beacon Press Audio presents An African American and Latinx History of the United States by Paul Ortiz. This audiobook is narrated by J.D. Jackson. Published by Beacon Press Audio, 2018. Author's Note. I was born in 1964, and it was in fourth grade that I remember the words being used against me for the first time. It was dinner time at the kitchen table when my new white stepfather announced that if I wanted to continue eating meals with the family, I would have to stop eating like a spick and stop drinking like a nigger. Until I learned proper table manners, I was forbidden to eat with my mother and baby sister. My stepfather referred to incidents where I defied his authority as Mexican standoffs, and he washed my mouth out with hot sauce as a lesson. He forced me to change my name from Paul Ortiz to Mick McDonald, McDonald being his surname. I was taught by the white adults around me that the blacks and Mexicans, the two groups were constantly paired in derision in the discourse of the post-civil rights era, had contributed nothing to the United States. To real Americans, we were all thieves. We stole good American jobs, but at the same time we were terribly lazy. Somehow we had also stolen their country, even though we had no idea how any of this had happened. There is a popular academic text on race and ethnicity titled, How the Irish Became White, but much of my early childhood years could be called, How a Mexican-American Boy Became Irish. My mother's marriage to McDonald ended in my mother's second divorce, and I spent my teenage life trying to reclaim my original name, as well as my ability to speak in public. In those years, I was struck with a severe speech impediment. Racism was a pervasive fact of life for my Chicano and black peers in San Leandro, California, and Bremerton, Washington, the towns where I spent most of my youth. Racism robbed us of our childhoods, and it destroyed our families. I wrote this book because, as a scholar, I want to ensure that no Latinx or black children ever again have to be ashamed of who they are and of where they come from. Collectively speaking, African Americans and Latinx people have nothing to apologize for. Every democratic right we enjoy is an achievement that our ancestors fought, suffered, and died for. When I was growing up, their struggle was not part of the curriculum. We were not taught that Mexico abolished slavery long before the United States did. We did not learn that African Americans organized an international solidarity campaign to support the Cuban War of Liberation against Spain. No one seemed to know that Haiti was viewed by many of our ancestors as a beacon of liberty during the grimmest moments of our own independence wars against the Europeans. We were ignorant of the fact that every country in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa has a history of democratic struggle to be proud of. The descendants of these epic movements are today's reviled, freeloading immigrants. This book is rooted in nearly 2 decades of university teaching, years of labor and community organizing, and my experiences coming of age as a Chicano in the United States. At Duke University, I offered a seminar titled Black Latino Histories, Cultures, and Politics as part of a 1-year visiting assistant professorship after I finished my history doctorate there in 2000. I had already taught separate courses in African American and Latinx studies as a graduate student. However, Duke students involved in labor organizing, human rights, and health advocacy told me that what they desperately needed was a new kind of course that placed the histories of the Black and Latinx diasporas in dialogue. Students were searching for a course of study that addressed the upsurge of immigration by people from Central America and Mexico to North Carolina. Lacking in critical discourse were insights into how these demographic shifts would impact the potential for social change in a state where African Americans had historically been oppressed. Even now, students in my African American and Latinx Histories research seminar at the University of Florida are asking questions about the history of the Americas that cannot be answered using historical frameworks that have been rendered obsolete by the forces of globalization. I first learned the craft of social history as an organizer with the United Farm Workers of Washington State. In the midst of the 8-year boycott of Chateau Saint Michel wines, where vineyard workers were struggling for union representation, I was frequently asked to give workshops about the history of the labor movement, the United Farm Workers, and earlier worker-consumer boycotts and strikes. This taught me the importance of historical research as a tool to pursue the truth on behalf of justice. People depended on me to get the story right, to frankly discuss the flaws of the labor movement, and to present American history as a usable narrative, warts and all. This meant trying to explain why agricultural workers in the centuries between Christopher Columbus and Ronald Reagan were generally impoverished, while their employers were fabulously rich. Answering this question informs the direction of this text. My experiences as a paratrooper and radio operator in the United States Army in the early 1980s formed a crucial part of the intellectual trajectory that led me to write this book. Herman Melville famously said, "A whale ship was my Yale College and my Harvard." For me, service in the U.S. Special Forces in Central America was an epiphany. In combat zones, I learned that the edifying story I had learned about my nation as a guardian and promoter of democracy was false. It took me many more years to explain exactly what was wrong with that history, and how a new and more accurate story might be told. Introduction. Killed helping workers to organize. Re-envisioning American history. This book draws from the voices and experiences of people from the African and Latinx diasporas in the Americas to offer a new interpretation of United States history from the American Revolution to the present. This is a story about how people across the hemisphere wove together anti-slavery, anti-colonial, pro-freedom, and pro-working class movements against tremendous obstacles. Historians have often used Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America and other European texts to discuss the development of American institutions and culture. How does our interpretation of American history change when we take our cues more from organizers such as Cuba's José Martí, Jamaica-born Amy Jacques Garvey, and the abolitionist Reverend Henry Highland Garnett, as well as the movements that they were a part of? In stark contrast to President Donald Trump's America First approach that involves building a wall between the United States and Mexico, Black and Latinx intellectuals and organizers have historically urged the United States to build bridges of solidarity with the nations of the Americas. The people of Latin America ethnologically are very little different from the Afro-American of this country, a columnist for the Chicago Defender, a black newspaper, wrote in 1915. They have Indian blood in their veins. So have we. They have African blood in their veins. So have we. They have European blood in their veins. So have we. It is only a difference in degree. When the United States deployed occupying armies into the Caribbean and Central America, the Chicago Defender demanded an immediate withdrawal. The United States cannot expect to succeed in establishing friendly relations or gain commercial growth and influence in Latin America until they have rightly and forever settled the race problem in this country. And further, the Anglo-Saxon will continue to borrow trouble throughout the world just so long as they exploit their claim of superiority over other groups of dark-skinned people. In a time of endless war, with democracy in full retreat, I argue that we must chart pathways toward equality for all people by digging deep into the past and rediscovering the ideas of Emancipation Day lecturers. Mexicano newspaper editors, abolition.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?